Pixar shorts on TV. So during the scene where Ham is like flipping through the channels super fast to find Al's toy barn again, some of the stuff he flips through are just like actual shorts that Pixar made beforehand. Like, you see the toy running away from Big Scary Baby. That's a nice callback considering it's about living toys. And you also see the clown here, which is also from an old Pixar short. And I remember some people being like, oh look, middle finger hidden in Toy Story 2, but nah. Bugs Life cameos. So something that people point out a lot is that the calendar in Andy's room is bug themed, and it appears to be Bugs Life themed specifically. Not only that, but during the flashback scene with Somebody Loved Me, you can see the same tree from A Bug's Life there. Deleted scenes. So this is to be expected with almost any movie, but Toy Story 2 has deleted scenes, and you can go watch them, complete with explanations on why at least a couple of them are cut. They're unfinished, as you can guess, like some are more unfinished as others, but some are also just like completely cut scenes with like no further context in the movie, or they're just alternate scenes that made at the end, or they're completely changed and replaced with something else. Like the way Woody ended up in the yard sale, like it was originally from like Rex accidentally flinging him up while playing, but they thought it was too quote-unquote coincidental and replaced it. And I can see what they mean, but I'd also argue that a lot of the stuff that happens in these movies are all just based on coincidences and get super overblown and stuff. And they also replaced the traffic crossing scene like to be in the actual city instead of the suburbs, which makes more sense. And then there's also some like other extended scenes with like Zurg and stuff. I suggest you just go watch them yourselves and get more official and clear explanations on them. Movie was almost deleted forever. This is the first new entry, and yep, it's exactly as it says. They just straight up almost lost the super iconic and beloved movie forever. I don't know how it happened exactly, but apparently somebody while working on it just straight up deleted the files of the movie they were working on. Luckily, somebody had a backup at home, which apparently they aren't allowed to do, but, you know, they had an exception here, and let this be a lesson as to why it's good to just do stuff like that and preserve builds, and maybe not be so anal about this kind of stuff like emulation, Anyway, this is a really funny story, like, especially to look back since it turned out in the end, but especially since the employee who had the backup copy, he drove back over to the studio with his wife, who was like holding his computer with the file on it over here. I guess they couldn't just transfer it with a floppy disk or anything, but apparently the computer also had its own seatbelt and everything too, and it's a really charming and silly thing to think of. Straight to video sequel. This is another thing that's become like much more common knowledge as of more lately, which is that originally, like a lot of Disney movies were getting at this time, Toy Story was also just going to have like a straight to video sequel. Now, whether or not it was going to be shit like the other ones usually tended to be, who's to know it? This could have been a completely different movie, or it could have been the same plot, both a lower budget, and maybe a different team, who's to say, but yeah, it's interesting to think of how this is almost like a completely lost and scrapped film, and who knows how it would have turned out if we got this instead of the final project that they considered to be ambitious enough to move into theaters in the end, and became one of the greatest movies of all time. Emily is Andy's mom. This is the most famous theory from like probably just Pixar in general, and maybe even one of just like the most famous movie theories in general. I haven't heard anybody actively talk about it for a long time now, but you know, it was pretty huge enough that everybody has heard about this at some point, which is simply to say that Emily, Jesse's previous owner, is Andy's mother. And, you know, there's nothing to really point at this aside from the cowboy hat. Like, people believe that's, like, where Andy got it from. And this could also explain why Woody was called a quote-unquote family heirloom when Al was trying to take him. And I guess you could also say that's why Jesse just naturally fits in back with the house so well. I'm not saying it's, like, real or not or anything. I'm just simply stating it here as, like, trivia as part of the Iceberg. Ts2 Tapes. This is the other last new entry that I got recommended, and what this is that if you remember, I mean, if you're here, you probably already know about this, especially if you watch this channel, like all the stuff that was going on with Super Mario 64 Iceberg, and personalized copies and stuff, and how that turned into more creepypasta stuff and anti-piracy and cursed copies and stuff, and it was like a really nice revival of like gaming creepypasta. And this comes from like the short little period where people were branching off into doing this for other games other than Mario 64 or like even N64 stuff, exclusively N64 stuff at least. But yeah, it's just that stuff, but for Toy Story 2, and I remember like somebody else is like doing like anti-piracy for the first game, which is a pretty good video if it uses like copyright music from other games. But anyway, yeah, it's just like creepy VHS Toy Story 2 video game tapes of like weird shit happening in the game, and I suggest you just watch these for yourself if you're curious. Like, sorry if I'm coming off as kind of like a buzzkill for this, but like it's all been like said and done, and I still do love this kind of stuff, and I'm glad like that the Mario stuff is still kind of going strong to this day. But yeah, like, even if it's not as popular as that stuff at all, I do feel like it's just like worth mentioning and putting it at the more like upper parts of the iceberg there than like the lower bottom. There's like a plenty of other stuff that's like way more dark and obscure and isn't just like a fun fan creation. But yeah, that does it for like the last like super simple and straight up trivia layer. Next up is like more theories and stuff like that, so stay tuned.